Welcome back to season 2 of the Katie Wellness Show. I am back with more amazing tools, awesome interviews, and some great discussions to help you optimize your health, body, mind, and spirit. Not only can you use these tools every day, you can also teach them to your children and to your family members so that you can raise emotionally and physically resilient children, so that you can show up more in your life, that you can take back your personal power. Get ready to tap into your intuition. I'm so excited that you're here. You are worthy of health and of joy and of thriving in your motherhood, thriving in your life. Thank you for being here today. Ashley, thank you so much for being on our podcast today. I love the little snippet of your story that I've read. For my listeners, if you would introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about your story.
Absolutely. I am a grief specialist, but I started thinking I was going to be a doctor, then turned graphic designer and went the complete opposite way, and found myself as a young mom unexpectedly. My husband and I were surprised with a pregnancy in our early 20s. And then she was diagnosed with a terminal illness when she was 2 months old. And so that kind of forced my hand of, I had hopes of being a working mom, but knowing that her time was so short, I put my career on hold and was like, I'll be a stay-at-home mom and caregiver. Like, I just want to spend every second I can with her. And that led me to understanding the depths of being a caregiver, as well as the anticipatory grief, and then the grief when it happened, when she did die. She was just about to be 21 months old. And I realized our society is so ill-equipped to handle loss. But it's something we've been doing for like thousands and hundreds of thousands of years, right? And we're like, how do we have prototypes of flying cars and like our grief resources are absolutely trash? So with that awareness, I was like, I think, my journey through my own healing is something that I needed to figure out, because I didn't, I was 27 when she died. And I didn't want to waste the rest of my life being bitter and angry and miserable and stuck in this grief. So, through my own healing journey, in addition to the desire to help other people, I kind of started on this journey of becoming a grief specialist, starting a nonprofit to help people heal in grief, and then recently just writing a book as a survival guide to loss. So that's kind of the overarching, my story in a nutshell.
I love that you talk about how we have these prototypes of flying cars, right? We are so interested in innovation, but I feel like we've been taught or trained or conditioned to fear emotion because emotions are messy. There's not something that you can one size fits all, that like, oh, you experience loss and then these are the steps that you have to go through to I don't know, release the grief or to move through it, and it's so different for every person.
It is.
So also you didn't have very long with your daughter after the diagnosis came, and that really is such a brave thing to do, to basically put your life on hold. Brave, but also that's that's where that emotion part comes in, right? Like, I want to be with my family. I want to as much time as I can with them. And I relate to that so much and my listeners have heard my story before, but I was I was the one who was sick.
Mm.
And at that point, I just felt a call to change how I was living my life, change the go, go, go fast pace, and just slow down to be more present with my kids. So
Mm.
I relate to that very much. And also your story started wanting to be a doctor, right? So that desire that you've had to help people has always been there.
it just kind of ended out different than you thought it
Totally. No, that's
would.
I looking back on my childhood, I kind of laugh about that because I knew as a young kid that I was here to help people. Like I was that like odd grade schooler who was like, I love Mother Teresa and Martin Luther King Jr. and like Gandhi, like I want to be like them. And and my parents were like, okay, like who did we have? Um, but I knew I wanted to help people. And I thought, in my mind, it's like, okay, you either have to be famous, like an actress or a singer or someone famous that you have the platform to help people, or you're a doctor and you actually physically help people. And then I got to college. I did, in high school, I was a total nerd and did camp biotech and, really was like on my path to being a researcher, doctor. Um, got to college, got accepted under biochemistry, had different, scholarships to different schools for science and technology. And then I was talking to my advisor, and he was like, well, to be a doctor, you're going to go to med school and like we'll cut on dead people and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, wait, what? And I was like, but I just want to look at x-rays and research in a lab and like extract DNA. I don't need to cut on dead people. And he's like, no, 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 that's like a prerequisite. Like everyone in med school will cut on dead people. And I was like, and I'm out. I was like, that's a deal breaker. I can't, I will barf everywhere or pass out or both. Like I can't do that. So
Yes.
that's when I looked in the majors that were available. And I was like, okay, what doesn't require calculus? Because it was kicking my butt. And I was like, if I'm not going to be a doctor, I don't want to take calculus. And so anyway, that's what led me to graphic communications because I have a very artistic mind and a creative mind, and I love that side of things too. And so, yeah, I did graphic communications, which has actually been wonderful in being able to apply that for, founding the nonprofit and writing my book and designing and all of that. So it's worked out well. And to your point, as Skylar's mom, I was in every doctor's appointment asking questions and like she had to do a swallow study at one point because she was starting to like choke while feeding and they were testing for aspiration. And so they had her drink this barium on an x-ray machine and you could see like basically when she was drinking you could see things happening. And I was like glued to the screen. I was like, this is so cool. They were like, you're a weird parent. Like, and most parents don't care about this as much as you. I'm like, dude, this is fascinating. Like, tell me more. So,
Yes, that inquiring mind. Tell me more. How can I figure out more about, ways to help my daughter and
yeah.
then how you've been able to use your path to now help others. So will you tell me a little bit more about like the name of your foundation and what you do specifically there?
Yes. The foundation is called Momento Foundation, and it is specifically designed to help people heal in grief. And we have two major programs that do that. So the first one is our Preserving Memories program. So that's designed specifically for people facing a terminal diagnosis, trying to catch people and help people on the proactive side of loss, right? The pre-loss, where when someone is facing a terminal diagnosis, you're going to have to say goodbye, but you also have time. And it's a weird gift, right? Because it's like, sometimes you don't want to know, but other times it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much that can be done that's just beautiful and healing. And so, one of those things we try and do is offer anyone facing a terminal diagnosis, so any age, any illness, so long as it's terminal or stage 4 cancer, we will provide a professional free portrait session. And they can have, pets or family members or the whole extended family, like whoever wants to be in the session, we allow it. And we preserve memories. And so we give them those photographs. And the other side of our programming is community support. So we have tools and resources to help the community show up and provide more education on how to support yourself as someone who's grieving and support other people in the community because we're just not taught that. We're not taught what to do with grief. We're not taught what to say, what not to say, how to show up, how to not show up. It's like that's the number one thing that I kept hearing was, okay, well, I really want to help, but I don't know how. And I'm like, this is an easy problem to solve, right? Like we can bridge these gaps because we just started with preserving memories 10 years ago. And that's the only service we offered. And families would say, oh man, my support has died down. Like neighbors aren't showing up anymore. My family isn't talking anymore. Like, no one really knows how to handle this long term. And then I would speak and talk to different people. And after I'd leave the stage, there'd be a group of people waiting to talk to me. And they'd say, oh my gosh, my neighbor just lost her baby. What do I do? Or my coworker just lost his dad. How do I help? And I was like, there are all these people who are hurting and need help. And then all these people who want to help and they just don't know how. Like we can bring these people together and create a bridge. And so that's how the community support program started, was just me hearing both sides and thinking there's such an easy way to connect this gap. So we have tools like howcaniloveyoubetter.com is one. We have an online platform where we're building out a learning library with education and interviews with experts and of various fields and trying to give a more holistic, comprehensive view of grief and not just the emotional side, which is often what's focused on. So those are our two main programs.
Yes, I love the long-term approach that you're taking, that there's ongoing support because I feel like um so I had a friend whose husband committed suicide, and she made a comment to me of, she's like, I feel like I have a lot of support right now, but in a year, in 6 months when it dies off and I don't have that support anymore and I don't have people reaching out, like, what do I do then? And just this idea that those who are not experience the grief think that grief is on a timeline. Like,
Yeah.
oh, in a year, you'll be over it.
Right.
And
Right.
that's just not true because the grief for those who are grieving, those who have experienced loss, the grief, sorry, I'm getting kind of emotional thinking about just my grandma,
Mhm.
and the grief does kind of hit you out of nowhere. And it's almost like you can feel them with you.
Mhm.
And it's really special, but also it's a reminder of that loss and it takes you back to the grief. So, just a reminder to anyone who has experienced loss and to those who haven't, there is no timeline for grief and there is no like end date. Like 1 year after, I'm not going to feel sad anymore. Like,
Right.
that's bizarre, which leads to why your foundation is so important.
Yeah.
Bridging that gap between experiencing grief, even if it's out of nowhere, even if it's 10 years down the road, like after the
Right.
loss, it's normal and it's okay.
Yep.
And for those who are on the other side, the community side, check on them,
Yes.
even 10 years down the road. And
Yeah.
yeah, so what are, give me some examples of ways that you encourage the community side to help those that are grieving.
Yeah. There are so many things that we can do as supporters. One, I think, is just to stay informed, right? So there are a couple elements to that I want to touch on. But as a part of staying informed, it's working to continue learning, right? There are people out there who are working really hard to educate people on things of what to say, what not to say, and why, right? And even I know you mentioned suicide, like even in the suicide community, there are people who are really advocating to change the language to say like died by suicide instead of committed suicide, right? And there are things that like as individuals when we bring to the table words, like words matter. And so I often say like honesty is so much better than platitudes, right? Like, please do not just go to a platitude because you don't know what to say. It is so much better if you just say, I don't know what to say right now, but I love you, right? Or I don't know what to say right now, but I'm here for you.
Instead of the go-to question of how are
Oh,
you doing? Like that is such a loaded question, especially for someone who is grieving and
totally.
experienced loss. Like, I don't know how to answer that. Like, no, I'm not okay, but I guess
Right.
I'm gonna put this face on and say, yeah, I'm fine. Everything's
And
fine.
for someone grieving, like chances are they just had like days worth of emotions in like a 2 hour period, right? So to say, how are you doing? It's like, well, 5 minutes ago I was melting down, but right now I'm actually okay. But like 10 minutes from now, I could be completely, bawling my eyes out. So I've heard someone add on a qualifier after that, which I appreciate. Like, if you really want to know how someone is doing, you can say, how are you doing right now? Right? Because then it takes the overwhelm away from the griever to say, how do I answer that? And then they can be honest, like, right now, I'm actually doing okay. Right? Or like, right now, I just feel really sad and I miss my grandma. Right? And like,
And I feel like if you're the one asking the question and you genuinely want a response, you
mm,
have to be there energetically. You
yes,
can't be asking just to ask and then, okay, move on. Let me tell you about how I'm doing, right? Like you
right.
have to have the capacity to take whatever answer
Yeah,
they have
yes.
and be okay with it and just wow
And not be scared by it,
and
right?
not
So
be
if someone
scared by
starts
it.
crying, it's like, and I tell people this often, like tears are not something to apologize for, and they are not something to be afraid of. So someone who's grieving, if you ask them how they're doing or how they're doing right now, and they start to cry, you didn't cause those tears, right? So many people are like, oh, I made them cry. And it's like, no, honey, like you did not make them cry. Like those tears were at the surface, they were ready to come out. You just gave them an outlet. And the beautiful thing is that person felt safe enough in your presence to let them out. And so anyone who's crying does not need to apologize for their tears. You can say, wow, apparently that needed to come out. Thank you for holding that space for me, right? Or for the person observing the tears, right? To say, hey, let it out, right? Whatever you need to do, I'm here to hold that space for you.
It's
And so,
cleansing and it's a release.
yes,
Like
it's
it doesn't
healing.
always it is. It maybe
Mhm.
makes us feel self-conscious
Yes.
if we're the ones
Well,
crying or if we're the ones observing even, but just
right.
holding space and a yeah.
And so much too, like in our society, oh man, I can get on a soapbox on gender roles, but boys are told, stop crying, don't cry. You're a sissy if you cry. Don't be a girl, stop crying, right? And and then you're like, for women, it's like, oh, you're too emotional, stop crying, like you're being too dramatic or you're feeling too much or whatever, right? So we have a society that has trained us to believe that crying is somehow weak or unacceptable, when in reality, it is a very human thing. And our bodies need to cry. And crying actually releases toxins, it releases the emotions that are trapped inside. And so it's a beautiful healing process. And so that's why um, if I cry in front of people, I'll just thank them and be like, thank you for creating this space for me to let this out because it clearly needed to come out. Where in the past I would be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry for crying, and I don't do that now because I understand how important it is and how sacred it is to let those tears out.
I'm sure that can be healing on both sides, right? The original
Yeah.
question was what do you teach the community?
Yes.
So holding space,
Holding.
um, being willing to ask the hard questions, but also be fully present in the how are you feeling right now,
Yep.
right? And just being there on an ongoing basis for those in your circle who are experiencing that loss.
And whether you're the griever or the supporter, being present, right? And having courage to get uncomfortable. because sometimes you just sit in the suck of it. Like there's nothing you can say other than this really sucks. And I'm so sorry, right? Like I'm here with you. I'm sitting in this with you. There's nothing I can do to fix this or make this better, right? We can't bring someone back from the dead yet anyway.
Yeah.
And so it's like we need to acknowledge the present and not try and push people into the future of, oh, it's going to be okay. You'll find someone else. You can have another kid, like whatever, right? That people say it's awful. Don't do that. And then we also try and give people language to be better in creating realistic realities for themselves and for the people they're supporting. So if you're grieving, how you talk about your loss matters, right? Like I used to say, oh, when my daughter died, I lost a piece of my heart that day. But if I actually believe that, can my heart heal? No, right? Because a piece of my heart is lost and it was lost when she died, and I'll never get that back because she's not coming back, right?
Right.
There's also a lot of, especially with baby loss or child loss, there's a lot of language around she was taken too soon or his life was cut short or, things that like people say to express the way they feel. But again, words matter. And so words help create the realities that we find ourselves in, and they can support our healing or not support our healing, right? And so that's one thing that we've also really tried to teach people. And when I do consulting or speaking, we focus on that a lot of, what are the words that are shaping your reality and how much are you even aware of them? Because a lot of times you'll just say things and it goes that, you're not even aware of it. And then it's not until someone points it out or you hear yourself in a recording or a conversation or something that you're like, oh, wow, like I did say it this way, or journaling even is really helpful. So there are tools to help bring more awareness to your life and then also tools to support you. And yeah, and I think to your point, just trying to bust some of the myths around grief. You said that grief doesn't have a timeline, which is absolutely true. Like I'm grieving today the loss of my daughter because she's still not here with me, right? And I love her just as much today as I did when she was born. And because that love is still there, the grief will be too. But it doesn't have to be so painful, right? And so
Right.
that's like, things that people have been taught, like the 5 stages of grief. We were given the pamphlet of the 5 stages of grief from our hospice facility when Skylar went on hospice. Well, being the research science nerd that I am, I was like, let me dive into the 5 stages of grief and go to the actual research. And so I went to Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's research on the 5 stages, and it's actually titled The 5 Stages of Death and Dying. And it's meant for people facing their own death, not for everyone else. So the 5 stages are truly a linear progression because there's an endpoint if someone dies, right? But the 5 stages are meant for the acceptance process up until someone dies. So it can feel more applicable for people facing a terminal diagnosis and the family members facing that terminal diagnosis. But once that person dies, the 5 stages are no longer applicable, right? And sure, they can be adjusted and manipulated. And that's what our society has done is we've taken the 5 stages and kind of, applied it to everything. But I think in a lot of ways it does us a disservice because so many people I've heard and talked to individually have said, well, I don't feel like I'm grieving right because I'm not super angry, or I haven't hit depression yet. When is that coming? And I'm like, no, 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 like you're free from that. You don't, that's not for you. If you do have depression or you are angry, that's totally fine. And that's a normal part of grieving, but it's not a, guaranteed stage that you're going to get to or hit or anything like that. So things like that as well, that I think our society has gotten wrong, that has been, again, not incredibly supportive because we aren't using the right language.
And it tries to make grief a one size fits all, which is just not true because we, as different human beings, we all have different experiences in life, and loss can look different. It can be sudden, it can be, that anticipatory grief
Yeah,
where we do have a little bit more time, but we know it's coming. Every experience is different and our
yeah.
perceptions are different. So
Mhm.
to to put us all anyone who's experienced grief in this box of first you experience this and then you experience this, like it just doesn't
Right.
even make sense.
No, and the relationships, what I like to share with people too is that your grief is so unique because your relationship to whatever you lost, whether it's a pet, a person, a dream, whatever it is that is no longer, that's unique to you. So, like, my husband and I both lost our daughter, and we lost the same daughter, and we were both present for her dying and her life and her birth. But our experience to grief was incredibly different, right? So, not only is it going to be different because of the uniqueness of each individual, but then the uniqueness of your relationship. So, I got to spend almost every day with her, right? And then, I had the bonding of breastfeeding and just being with her and having that pregnancy bonding time and stuff like that that my husband didn't get to have. But then, even within myself, how I grieve the loss of my daughter is going to be different than how I grieve the loss of my grandpa and how I grieve the loss of my dog. And each time it can be tempting to say, oh, well, last time I grieved this way, so this time I'll probably grieve this way too, right? Or last time this really helped me, so I'll go to that for this as well. And not to say that that's wrong, because it can be helpful as a starting place, but just not keeping that as like a hard expectation, right? So, like, letting go of expectation is one of the most helpful things you can do in grief, and just listening to your body. So, the other main thing that we teach is that our bodies are an active participant in healing, and they're here to help you. And so, we have often looked at bodies as just like rental cars, right? Where it's like, we just like abuse them a little bit, we push them to the max and don't really take care of them very well, and think of them as like partnerships, right? It's just a vehicle. But actually our body is so much more intuitive and smart and capable of communicating back to us. It's not just this hollow thing that doesn't have life function, right? Um, And so, if we can listen to our bodies and start to say, wow, my body's telling me I'm really tired right now, instead of pounding caffeine, maybe I'll take a nap. Or when I get home, I'll rest, try and find different ways to rest to support myself, try and get a good night's sleep and see if I'm this tired tomorrow. Right. Or, I have this chronic drainage. Like, what am I eating that's causing? Is it the sugar? Is it the gluten? Is it something else that I'm eating that's causing this? But oftentimes, I think we just look at our bodies as, like I said, the rental cars with like just check engine lights that come on every now and then that we kind of listen to and sometimes ignore, instead of really investing in it as a relationship and as a two-way communication where our bodies are trying to help us heal.
That kind of leads into my next question a little bit. I feel like you kind of answered it already, but the question that I'm wondering is, what are some ways that you and your foundation help others process loss and grief instead of trying to escape it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, presence is a big one that we've already talked about. So, I won't go too much further into that.
Yeah. I think part of that is like listening to your body, listening
Mhm.
to the intuition. If you feel like you need to cry, it's
Yes.
okay to cry.
Yes.
Like
Let it
it's
out.
healing and cleansing, and it's part of the emotional release that we need.
Yeah. And I think too, presence and boundaries. So sometimes in grief, we forget how vulnerable we are and potentially how needy we can be, because we're so desperate for relief, right? And so setting healthy boundaries is really important for yourself and for other people to take care of yourself. But one way we encourage healing too is really through the photographs. And that's why we started that program, is because when Skylar died the very first week, my brain was really struggling with, oh my God, she's gone. Like she just isn't here anymore. Like she stopped existing. Like, what does that even mean? Right? Like, where is she? I'll never see her again. Like, all of these things were swirling in my head. And so when I would walk into her room and see the photo on her, like I had framed pictures, and I would see the photo that I had framed of her on her shelf in her nursery. I would walk in and think, God, this is so painful. I can't even see her face right now because the fact that she's gone just hurts, like my heart's shredding in my chest all over again. So I turned them face down. But then, weeks went by, like maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and I just missed her so much. And so then the pain of not having her with me was overshadowed by the pain of missing her. And so I would turn the photos back up because I was like, I just want to see her blue eyes and her rosy cheeks and her peach fuzz head, right? Then over time, I realized I had this really safe, sacred space in just holding the photos. So whenever another human is involved, even with the best intentions on both parties, there is an element of fear or judgment or expectation that comes from just humans interacting with each other. With the photos, that doesn't exist. And so the photos you can sit with, and if they're done well, which is what we try and do, we capture the emotion, right? And we capture the authenticity of a moment. And that moment is what we're remembering. And we're remembering the love and the joy and the laughter and the relationship that we shared. And so the photos are really a tool, and it's a research-based support tool. I didn't know it when I first started, but it was validated later on through research that I found, that photos really are an incredible research-based support tool to help people navigate grief. And the reason why I believe that's true is because it is that safe place that gives you the freedom to feel. And I would sit with those photos and I would ugly cry with snot pouring out of my face. And I wouldn't have to worry if some friend who came to visit me thought I was gross because I had so much snot pouring out of my face. I could just sit with those photos and think, wipe my nose on my sleeve and, be gross and not worry about it, right? Um, I could also sit with them and tell her how much I missed her. And it was a way to continue the bonds of our relationship. And it helped me wrap my brain around, okay, our love did not end when she died, but it's transformed. And so, how do I wrap my brain around this transformed relationship now? Because then I would get signs from Skylar and I would still feel her love and feel her presence. Like you said, you can feel their presence sometimes. And so the photos really give that kind of transition period for your brain to make sense of it all, right? Dr. Mary Frances O'Connor is one of my grief researcher heroes. She's actually currently an active researcher who is a neuroscientist and just basically like everything that I wanted to be. And she has put so much effort and research into new discoveries in grief. And it's been amazing. And one of the things she said is that our brains as a neuroscientist really struggle because we map out where our loved ones are at all times. So at any given time, you could ask me where my husband is, and I could pretty much give you a detailed, accurate description, right? Like right now, he's probably in his co-working space. When he comes home, he's probably in the chair over there, like we know where our people are that are important to us. And so when that person dies, our brains really struggle with the mapping of it, right? It's like, gosh, where is that? And so the photos can serve as a placeholder to say, they're not in their chair. They're not, their head is not on the pillow at night, but we're holding them here. And even though they're not here to hold, this photo gives me a way to hold them. And it gives me a way to continue to talk to them. And what I learned too is now it's been over, gosh, 15 years since my daughter died. And what I've learned is that the photos go on the grief journey with me and they evolve with grief. And so sometimes they're an incredible tool to sit and cry with and feel awful with, that you're just like, I'm in the depths of my depression today or whatever it is. But then they can also be a tool when you're coming up on the lighter side of things and you're like, wow, I just remember how we had these memories that made me feel good and like all the love that we shared. And so throughout the time, the photos have been the tool that rides all the waves of grief with me and it evolves with my grief. And as I've healed, the photos have continued to bring love and joy and memory to my life. And so that's like a longer way to answer your question, but I think it's so important because photos are often overlooked as an actual tool when they are a very powerful tool to help people heal in grief.
Well, and I've had two thoughts as I've listened to you talk. I love, love, love that your foundation does these memory photos, these photos of whoever needs to be involved in this picture to capture this moment in time, um, to carry on after. I'm big into family history, and so I love like having that proof of life, that proof of
Yeah.
love, that proof of
Yeah.
like this person existed and these are the types of things that they loved and this is what they were known for. And I think as support people especially, we sometimes avoid talking about the person who has passed to the person who is grieving because we're like, oh, if I talk about them, then they're going to remember and then it's going to be sad for them and they
Yeah.
might cry.
Right. Yes.
And I'm sure it's different for every person, but I'm curious if you have research to back this or from the experience that you've had working with so many people in the supportive space, what are your thoughts on bringing up memories of deceased people who have passed on
Yeah.
to especially someone who has experienced the loss more significantly?
Sure. I think it will vary for every person on whether they want to talk about it or not, but that doesn't mean we can't ask if they're comfortable talking about it, right? So this is a common thing that happens in people wanting to support others is they just think that they should know everything, right? Like you should somehow have all the answers and know whether this person wants to talk about it or not. But how can we possibly do that, right? Relationships are so complex on the best of days. Like, right? Like I have even as a grief specialist, right, have been in situations like, oh no, do I say this? Do I not say that? Like it happens to everybody, right? And so that's a very human thing. And it's also totally okay to ask and just say, hey, I had this memory of so and so, and I just wanted to share it with you. Are you open to talking about it right now? Right? Like you can just ask. You don't have to know whether they are okay with talking about it or not. And then if they're like, I mean, most of the time, like just giving people permission to have the control over what they engage with is really, really helpful. So, in the same breath as that, I'll also say I have not met a lot of people who would say, I don't ever want to hear their name again, right? Most people are sad that their loved ones no longer talked about anymore. Like my husband is so sad that none of his current friends know him as a dad. Like none of his like he's not recognized, like that part of him feels so distant and forgotten, right? But just not too long ago, he had a friend ask, like on Father's Day, ask him, like, hey, like, I know we don't know you as a dad, but like, would you be willing to talk about it? And that just meant the world to him, right? So, and he's like, and I also feel like I need to qualify that my husband is not an open sharing person, right? So it is challenging for his friends to step up and say, hey, like, would you want to talk about this? Because he's an introvert, he's very reserved, you know. Um, so all that to say, like, even he was like, I really appreciate people asking. And so, yeah, don't feel like you have to know, and don't feel like you have to know what that person's thinking or feeling, and don't assume that you know what they're thinking or feeling, right? Because that's the other thing that happens is a lot of people make assumptions that are wrong, and then the relationship suffers as a result. So it's okay to ask questions. Like we need to be asking more questions just to say, hey, like I had, I had a thought of, so and so, and would you be open to talking about it? Or, hey, Mother's Day is coming up. I know that's going to potentially be a hard day for you. How are you feeling about it? Because I think it's going to be hard for you, but I don't know how you're actually feeling about it, right? Or whatever it is. And then the other thing I want to encourage people to do is when you know of someone who's lost someone, to put reminders in your calendar on the actual date of whatever it is, like whether someone died or their birthday or a significant holiday, to just check in with that person and say, you don't even have to bring it up. If you're like, I don't want to make them cry, like, well, if it's that level of discomfort for you, all you have to do is send them a text that says, I'm thinking about you today. That's it. They'll know what it's for, right? And so then you don't have to make it awkward. You can just say, I'm thinking of you today. And that is incredibly powerful, especially because so many people don't check in over the long term.
What a very simple, actionable to-do item. How long would it take to put that reminder in your phone and set it to repeat annually, right?
Exactly.
Like you
Mhm.
do it once and then you continue to check on them, even if it's just,
Yes.
hey, I'm thinking about you. I love that you encourage people to ask, hey, I had this memory. Would you like to hear it? Or do you want to talk about some days will be, no, I'm not wanting to talk about them today, but I'll reach out when I'm ready to hear that memory. You know,
Mhm.
and I think it's important as the support people or as the person asking to not take that as a rejection or take it personally. Like, again, being very present and being very mindful that everyone's grief is going to look different and there's
Yes.
no timeline and the stages of grief, like let's just wipe that from our
Yes.
from our vocabulary, but our
Mhm.
words matter. And I think on both ends, just being present with the emotion that we're feeling.
Mhm.
um I love so much all the information you shared today, and I would love to know, I'm going to put in the show notes where we can connect with your foundation, follow
Yeah.
more of your work. I know you emailed me a TED Talk, so I would
Mhm.
like to put at least one of those in the show notes so people can get more information from you. This is such an important topic that we start changing the vocabulary around grief and the expectations on both sides. So
Yes.
people who are grieving don't have this expectation of, well, first I have to feel this and this and this, and there's an
Totally.
end to grief, but also
Yes.
the community. So
Absolutely.
will you tell me where are some of the best places to connect with you?
Yes. Momentofoundation.org is, and it's Momento, like moment O. And that is our nonprofit website. You can check it out. If you know someone facing a terminal diagnosis or a stage 4 cancer, feel free to have them apply. We'll do our best to serve them. We don't have photographers across the country just yet. That's what we're in the midst of scaling. But we do serve as many people as we can. And if you're a photographer, please feel free to join us. You can
Yeah.
apply and get trained, and we do a trauma-informed training and really do our best to take care of you as a photographer or volunteer as well. The general way to follow along of what I'm doing, get in touch, is ashleynicolejones.com. And that has some of my speaking and consulting work, as well as my book and, blog stuff, any of that. So that'll be a great resource, especially as new versions of my book come out. So the hardcover is just available for pre-order and launching March 31st. Then we have the soft cover will be out shortly after that. And then later this year, the audiobook will be out. And so all of those will be updated on my website.
I'm so sorry. We forgot to talk about the book. Tell me the title of
Okay.
your book again.
It's called When You Can't See the Light, and it is a trauma-informed guide to surviving a significant loss. So it's literally like me taking you by the hand and saying, I am so sorry you're feeling this much pain right now. Here are all the practical, tangible things you can do to support yourself and move along this journey of healing, not a journey with a final destination of arrived, but more like a labyrinth where we journey inward and then come back out.
I
Yeah.
love that so much. Practical, actionable, like that is my love language, I feel like.
And because I'm a designer, I actually designed it as a full color book with artwork throughout. So I did some of the watercolor along with two other amazing women who helped me quite a bit, and then a few other friends who just contributed one or two pieces. So that has beautiful watercolor throughout and actionable steps, and it's trauma informed. So we start with the body first, right? Like, how do we take care of ourselves? How do we be gentle with ourselves? How do we support ourselves through basic flow of hydration and breathing and, the nervous system, understanding how our bodies actually work to support ourselves.
Mhm.
And then we dive in more to understanding rest, understanding self-care, tackling the emotion side of grief, and understanding grief in general. So, those we kind of go through there are no stages and there are no timelines, and no loss is too small, right? So if you're sad about your fish dying, that's okay to grieve, right? So we go through that, and then we kind of that kind of completes the inward journey of the labyrinth, and then we kind of focus on coming back out, right? So how do we interact with the world when we're not as productive as we once were? How do we create better mindsets and boundaries and stuff like that to re-engage in healthy ways?
So it sounds like that this book is generally targeted for those who have experienced the
Mhm.
loss. Is
Absolutely.
it something that can be a helpful resource for the support people as well, friends
Yeah.
and even coworkers? I think people who interact daily with these
Yes.
with people who have experienced loss.
Yes, and I specifically designed it to be potentially a gift book. So if you know someone who's gone through a loss that you're like, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to say, you can give them this book, right? But also I really do encourage everyone to read it because one, there's practical life advice in there, like stop shooting on yourself, right? Like surrender the shoulds. Every time you say, I should have done this, or I should have done that, or it should have happened this way, or I should have been there, whatever, right? Like those are unhelpful, horrible things that like it doesn't matter if you're grieving or not. Anyone who follows that advice will just generally have a better reality. So
I knew I liked you. I say that all the time too. Like, stop shooting on yourself.
yes,
Like, it's not helpful and it doesn't change the
oh,
past or the future.
right. It
Like,
makes you miserable.
it does.
Yeah. So that's a whole little subsection. Um, and the other thing too is if you read this as a supporter, you will know how to ask better questions, right? So you'll read it and you'll understand, oh, how's your water intake today? Can I bring you a glass of water? Can I bring you a tea? Can I bring you something because I know you need to hydrate?
When
And
was the last time
probably
you
not.
took a really deep breath, you
Right.
know?
Yeah, or just saying like, I'm trying to go through the chapters in my head, but like even movement, right? Where it's like, hey, when's the last time you've moved? Like, do you want to go on a walk together? Right? Like little things that you can offer as a way to be supportive, not overstepping anything, but giving them options on how to engage. And that's it kind of goes along with the tool that we created, howcaniloveYoubetter.com, which is a custom email form that you can say, hey, I see that you're going through a tough time. Here are the ways that I'm willing to support you right now. I can take your dog for a walk. I can check your mail. I can come bring you lunch. I can do XYZ, right? And then because it's emailed, you don't have to have any awkward conversation or accidentally say the wrong thing. It's emailed. The person has time to sit with it because that's the other thing with in-person communication. It can feel really rushed. And then you're like, oh, I offered something I wasn't prepared to follow through on. Or the person grieving is like, oh my gosh, I really need help with this, but I couldn't think of it in the moment, right? So the email allows people to respond. And then there's a calendar plugin to say, great, you can bring me lunch Friday at noon. And then the person can say, email back and say, great, I'll see you Friday at noon. What do you want? Or I'll just bring you something, right? So that is really nice. And I think the book can help people make even stronger suggestions on the offerings for how to support someone. So yeah, I think it's helpful for everyone. And like we've all experienced loss, right? So even if you have not experienced a recent loss, there might be things that are still lingering inside that you're not even aware of. That by reading this book, it might give you space to actually feel things from many years ago that at the time your body maybe couldn't even handle or wasn't equipped to handle, to where it just kind of repressed some of those feelings or suppressed them. And now where you are in life and then the support tools that you have, whether it's the book or therapy or something else, even wisdom that you've gained, your body might be more willing to allow that to come up and out and release it. So I think it's a great book for everyone.
Agreed.
Also,
And
I'm
I was
biased.
I was even thinking how this could be a great tool for people who have the terminal illness, who are
Mhm.
old enough. So I believe very much in like the more that we process our emotions and hold space for all of our emotions and release those emotions, the healthier that our body systems can be, which
Yes,
then gives us more capacity to, fight. Because I also feel like when we are faced with a terminal illness, we go through so many stages of what if or the loss of what could be. Um, yeah, just thinking about my friend who's going through cancer again. I think it's like her third or fourth time with chemo, and she's just like, I just want to, live long enough for my son to graduate high school, and I just want to live long enough to meet my first grandchild, and just like grieving the loss of the
yes,
life that she thought she was going to live.
absolutely.
I feel like
Yeah,
this could be a resource for that as well.
totally. Yes. And I think that's something really powerful that you just hit on, that like grief grief takes so many forms, right? And I mentioned this like very briefly before, whether it's like the loss of a person, pet, or even a dream, right? And what you just described is layers of grief because she's potentially facing a life-threatening situation. Then she has the future that she had imagined that's no longer, right? And there are going to be other losses with cancer, right? The loss of hair, loss of potential body parts, loss of like there are losses that you don't necessarily equate to grief that are absolutely elements of grief and elements to be grieved, um, that don't often get recognized. So absolutely, like anyone facing a serious illness or a loss of a job, a loss of a house, a divorce, like those are other losses that often don't get recognized as like official things to grieve, but are absolutely losses that deserve to be grieved. and need to be grieved. And I actually did a speech on this last year, May 1st. It was called May Day. And we were talking about burnout being in work cultures. I think a lot of times people are like, well, burnout's just when you're overextending your energy and you're not doing the things that you really want. And it's like, yes, but what if there is an element of grief to burnout, right? Like, what if it's all the losses that we haven't acknowledged that are building up and staying inside? And so I think there's this, to your point of releasing the feelings and getting them up and out. It's like, yeah, like we need to acknowledge the losses, whether it's a mass layoff or teammates being let go or, not hitting our goals. Like there are definitely griefs that we interact with on a daily basis that are going unacknowledged as grief. So I think it definitely, those are the smaller ones, right? That we might not even recognize, but yep, exactly. Air quotes. But yeah, it's important. And I think, there's the one chapter or the subsection that I mentioned, like there is no loss too small to grieve. And I think that's really important for people to hear and acknowledge and say, you know what, even if it's, like the loss of an actress that I didn't even know, right? Like when there are so many that have happened recently, but Catherine O'Hara, right, is like the most recent one where we're like, oh my gosh, that was everyone's mom in Home Alone, right?
Yes.
We all loved her. And then there's Schitt's Creek and all the other stuff she's done, but it was like, wow, like my teammate and I got teary-eyed over that one. And we were like, this feels so silly. We didn't even know her. But it's still a loss, right? And we have every right to grieve that. So anyway, yeah.
I can't wait to get my hands on this book to just explore and see how I've been holding on to grief for whatever, like you said, the loss of a dream or, these smaller, quote unquote, smaller losses and the bigger losses.
Yep.
Thank you so much for coming
Thank
on
you.
today, for sharing such great and valuable and needed information with us, as well as actionable tools. And I'm excited to share this episode with my listeners. I think they will really benefit from a lot of this information, and I'll be sure to include all of your resources and links down in the show notes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashley, and I appreciate your time.